Hi everyone, I hope you are doing well. So today I wanted to create this little message on pattern recognition. Now, before I begin, I just want to say if my voice doesn't sound all that great today, I apologize. I wanted this particular message to really be a video, but I've been struggling with my voice this week, and I was hoping it would get better, but I'm still here, so it's easier for me to do an audio on this one. But I've been sitting with this message for the last couple of days and wanting to, video record it, but it just wasn't happening. And I'm like, you know what? I keep getting late. Let me just release it as an audio instead. So here goes. The message I really wanted to put out today was around pattern recognition. Hopefully, if you've gone through an awakening, you can understand that this is actually one of the most powerful realizations that you should actually be experiencing after an awakening. Simply because before your awakening, you really are, living your life very unconsciously, reacting to situations without really realizing much of your life, how it's operating through cycles, the same patterns, the same habits, and, energetic patterns, really, whether they're being passed down from your lineage or something that you've learned along the way and you keep repeating it. But when you actually take that macro level look, because your consciousness has expanded after an awakening, everything starts to really shift for you. This is when you finally, from that expanded consciousness, are starting to see what appeared to be hidden before, which is, oh my God, the same kind of people keep, circling my life. My relationship dynamics are always the same. Maybe the type of boyfriend or girlfriend that I keep attracting into my life are the same sort of people. And, you start to even notice your emotional triggers, what you haven't been able to release for so long. Your behaviors, why they possibly, pattern what's within your family. So all of this starts to come to the surface and you realize, oh my God, I've been living my life on autopilot from all these patterns, which is who I really am. And that's not who you want to be. And the true shift really happens when you have that shift in awareness, because now that you have the awareness, you can start to really break away from those old patterns and really create something new for yourself. Now, one of the greatest, realizations you really should be having about pattern recognition prior to your awakening and really post awakening is that you may tend to, prior to your awakening, really say, oh my God, I can't believe this is always happening to me. I can't believe so-and-so is always behaving this way. There seems to be, this sort of blame that we place outside of ourselves. But then the shift that really takes place as your consciousness expands is that you start to realize that life is actually happening through you. And what you're meant to recognize is the pattern that keeps repeating in front of you over and over so that it can be seen, it can be healed, it can be understood, and finally released. And until you do that, it doesn't matter how this pattern or this cycle really shows up for you. You will keep seeing it with different people, with different circumstances, repeating in your life over and over until you understand the lesson that it's trying to teach you. Remember, the whole purpose of your lifetime, your human lifetime, is to expand your consciousness. So the universe is not going to be nice to really teach you the lesson it's trying to teach you. Each time that you do not recognize the lesson, it comes back harder and stronger, not to harm you, not to punish you, but to be your teacher so that you can go through it and expand through it. Now, you may look at those situations when you're going through it unconsciously as being frustrated, being, emotionally triggered, feeling like you're a victim. But as long as you see that, microscopic view of what you're going through versus the macro level view, which you eventually get there. It takes a couple of times sometimes, getting on that same merry-go-round over and over till you realize, wait a second, I know what this is, and I'm not going to participate. This time, I'm going to own this lesson and really grow from it. Whether you think of it in that way or not, but ultimately, you end up, growing from that situation that's appearing in front of you, and you make a different choice. Now, let's actually talk about what really shifts within you after an awakening. So you have lessons before your awakening, and then you have lessons after your awakening. But what really shifts? What is it that changes within you that gives you more of a sense of control over that situation, that allows you to really move through it with more ease? Well, that shift is your awareness. Really being able to see the cycles repeating themselves, because now you have that. Your expansion in consciousness does give you, it's almost like being in a building. When you're living unconsciously, it's like you're on the ground floor. You have a limited view. But if you were to, move onto the third floor or the fifth floor of that building, you would be able to see a lot more. And so going through an awakening puts you on that higher level where you can see much more, through that lens that you now have on life, which allows you to not have the same sort of reactions that you did previously. And so you can almost call this a sacred pause. The pause that you put between you and the situation that you're experiencing, so that you can consciously choose something different. So for example, if you were having an argument with somebody, a heated argument, and it's, something that you've had as a struggle throughout your life, well, that lesson may show up again after your awakening. But what you will find will finally shift in you is that you will not partake in those arguments the same way. At least, if it shows up right after an awakening, you possibly may. But as more and more time, goes along, and you start to meditate and you start to reflect, you bring yourself back into that present moment, your sense of awareness is going to shift, and you will be able to pause, think about that situation very differently, and respond, not being on autopilot, but really coming from a place where you really want to be, so that you have a better sense of, what that situation really is and how you really want it to turn out, instead of just getting involved in that heated debate that's always taking place in your life. You will approach it from a very different understanding and sense of awareness. Now, if you're somebody that listens to this and, says, no, wait, I'm not there yet. I have gone through my awakening. I'm still, growing in the process, but this is not my reality just yet. Well, what you want to do then is to start to utilize that sacred pause in those situations, those same repeating patterns, because now you can probably identify them better than you did before. And knowing where you are on your journey, you should be able to take a look at that situation and really practice that sacred pause wherever you can, so that you can shift from that situation, you can shift from that pattern, and when you do, it will stop appearing in the same manner. Now, there is another thing that really helps you out on your awakening journey as you expand your consciousness, and that is the sharpening of your intuition. Of course, this comes with ascension, the regular practice of your meditation, but what it allows you to do is get a higher perspective and almost like warning signals well in advance. And you really want to use these to your benefit, because what they end up doing is they end up creating that perspective shift in the midst of those lessons, where your intuition guides you to say, this is not how you want to respond. So let's say you are getting into a heated argument with that same individual that you always do. This time your intuition might guide you to say, wait, You don't want to be heated. And you may start to, enter that conversation with anger, but then you may retract and, really shift that conversation. And that really gives you a good sign of, I am moving in the right direction. So this may not be immediate, but as you move along and you start to sharpen your intuition, this will surely help you along the way. You can start to notice things like you'll find red flags showing up earlier with certain types of people that you want to avoid. You may start to experience energy shifts in people or environments and really being able to tell where you are and if you are aligned or misaligned with your environment. Seeing those repeating lessons before they repeat again. You may actually get that, sort of a warning well in advance. So you want to use that to your advantage. And really being able to see the, divine timing and synchronicities early in advance. So pattern recognition is here to help you with your expanded consciousness as you move through your awakening journey so that you can really shift the trajectory of your life. So just remember, if pattern recognition really shows up for you, this is one of the clearest signs that you are progressing on your awakening journey. You want to stop seeing life as being random chaos and really start to see it for the intelligence that it really holds, the lessons it's trying to teach you, only to bring about your own personal growth. And, with that, if you are truly working towards a full-on awakening where you are moving towards enlightenment, you want to really start to notice these patterns so that you can, practice that awareness, practice that conscious reflection so that you can actually move towards freedom. Once you see these patterns clearly, they can no longer control you. And this is a key piece to moving towards enlightenment. Thank you so much for listening. I really hope this was helpful. God bless.